Very common and very pervasive belief that the God of the Old Testament is more harsh and judgmental, and the God of the New Testament is more kind and loving. And there are a lot of problems with this belief. It's as pervasive as it is. I kind of feel like if you took one good read of the Old Testament, you would know that that's not true. But still, this belief really persists, and I think what it does is the lie really turns people off from reading the Old Testament. But one of the many reasons why that is incorrect and untrue, I realized today in my Bible reading, and that is as I studied the Exodus over the past several months with my CBS and the wandering in the wilderness, etc. The Old Testament is absolutely full of God showing mercy, many, many, many second chances. The way that he rescued his children, the way that he provided for them, the way that he really didn't, not, if you read through, Exodus and Numbers and etc., there were many times that the people of Israel complained at him and fussed at him and didn't trust him, and yet he still provided for them and did not judge them. There were some times where, they had consequences, but there were a lot of times that they didn't. And even in the prophets, you see, exiting Egypt. There are many times in the Old Testament where you see how just kind and gracious that God is. And yet, in the New Testament is when God pours out all of his judgment, all of the, sins of the whole world were based the true harsh reality of God's judgment for sin. And that was all poured out on his son, Jesus Christ. So it's absolutely a lie that the God of the Old Testament is just harsh and judgmental. And the God of the New Testament is just kind of this, warm, fuzzy, kind and loving God. The truth is that God is consistently God throughout the whole Bible. He is absolutely shown as having steadfast love and loving kindness to his people in the Old Testament. And in the New Testament, when he pours out all of his judgment on the sins of the whole world, he's still steadfastly loving, kind, and faithful. And really, it's all part of his whole story that all works together, where he has had the rescue plan from the beginning. And the whole Bible shows that. And I just thought it was interesting because usually, when you hear that, people can point out that, no, the God in the Old Testament is kind and loving. But then on the flip side, the fact is that the God of the New Testament poured out judgment. There are definitely times in the Old Testament when God allowed his people to face the consequences of their actions. But there is nothing like the wholesale judgment of sin that he poured out on the cross in the New Testament.